On my end, in the email, on my side, it's a clickable link. So I must have not put it in there right, or there was some formatting that wasn't correct.
Right. But it
Yeah.
worked the second
So,
time, so
okay.
that
Good.
was good.
All right. We are good to go on
Okay,
the,
so good afternoon. Welcome everyone to the City of St. Catharines Heritage Advisory Committee Designation Subcommittee meeting for Friday, April 11th, 2025. The time is now 2:42 p.m. and we have quorum. So I'd like to call the meeting to order. And we'll begin with the recognition of traditional territories. We begin this gathering by acknowledging the land on which we gather is the traditional territory of the Haudenosaunee and Anishinaabe peoples, many of whom continue to live and work here today. This territory is covered by the Upper Canada Treaties and is within the land protected by the Dish with One Spoon Wampum Agreement. Today, this gathering place is the home to many First Nations, Métis, and Inuit peoples. Acknowledging this reminds us that our great standard of living is directly related to the resources and friendship of Indigenous people. We now move on to today's agenda. Do we have any additions or deletions to the agenda?
I don't believe so.
Seeing none, I have a motion to approve the agenda. Okay, Holly moves that the designation subcommittee adopt the agenda for this meeting held on Friday, April 11th, 2025. Copies having been previously distributed. In favor? Okay, and that carries. Next, we'll move on to consideration of the minutes of the previous meeting on March 27th, 2025. Any questions, comments, or changes? Okay. Seeing none, I have a motion to adopt the minutes of the March 27th, 2025 meeting. Okay, Robert Speck moves that the designation subcommittee approve the minutes of the meeting held on Friday, March 27th, 2025. In favor? Okay, that carries. Any declarations of interest? I have an interest in the St. Paul Crescent property. Anybody else? Okay. So we're going to begin with item 7.1, which is the 906 evaluation of the St. Paul Crescent property, and Lauren is going to lead that discussion.
All right. Let me just get set up here. So, kind of continuing on from last month, um, make sure that this is correct here. So kind of continuing on from last month, and we went through the historical research that was put together for this property. I put together a kind of draft architectural description and contextual, like local area description for these buildings. Um, as you know, it's really three buildings, or you know, two buildings that were there are two kind of distinct sections, all on one property. So for the purpose of the architectural description, I've separated them into 140, 143, 145, and 147. Whether or not 145 and 147 should just be considered together is something that we can talk about as a committee, because I know that their date of construction is very close and they are very attached. So we can talk about that, but I've treated them as separate buildings because they are very distinct. Um,
Sorry, Lauren, can I jump in just with one small
yeah,
point?
of course, yeah.
Just for the addressing,
Mhm.
um, the firehouse is 143. The
Yeah.
building on the left is actually both 147, 145, and 147.
Oh,
And
okay.
and then the building on the right, the older building is 151 and 153. The
Oh,
entrance to the upstairs apartments has the address 149 on it. So it's actually
Oh, that's very interesting.
Yeah, one four
Yeah.
five through 153 on, but small point, I
Well,
just mentioned it.
yeah. We'll have to sort that out then because I think only 143 and 145 and 147 are on the register then. Even though
Oh, is it on the register, so that number?
I think so,
Yeah,
yeah. But because it's such a complex, you know, property history and there multiple properties and multiple addresses, we can probably we'll sort that out, I think.
yeah,
Um, both with on our end with how Amanda understands the addresses and also
right.
um yeah, how it actually appears in the register and how it appears on title, I think. That's a good point, though. Thanks for letting me know.
I think on title, the whole thing is considered 145. Same
Yeah,
part. Yeah,
yeah, I think
so
that's
it's,
true. Yeah, exactly. Um,
anyway,
do
sorry
you
about that.
think do you no no do you think we should call the whole thing 145 then, and just refer to like the buildings as different buildings? Like,
It might be good for clarity's sake. I'm
yeah,
fine either way. Yeah.
yeah. And we can just
It is a bit of a mess because the city and Canada Post and the different utilities all have the different units numbered differently. So
yeah, I can
it's
imagine.
crazy.
Okay. Well, I think that's something that I can take back and kind of find clarity on, how it's going to be best described, if we move forward to designation, most accurately described. It might be useful to just like give names to the different sections in some meaningful way. And that way, again, if we get to the stage of describing heritage attributes, we can kind of have a set way of describing these things that aren't the addresses, if because that's a complicated thing.
Right,
Sorry,
right.
yeah, Holly, you
Oh,
wanted to say something? Yeah.
I just wanted to say that Crescent was spelled wrong.
Oh, where?
St. Paul Crescent, there should be an S there.
Yes.
Crescent. Yeah, thanks.
Okay, it won't let me edit it right now, but I will fix that as well. Yeah. Um, Good point. It's interesting because this has been like the slide for the last like 4 months. I just didn't notice. Okay. Um, I guess we'll move forward with this. So I guess we'll describe this property first, which is the former fire hall, and we'll figure out the best way to describe these things. Um, this building consists of two-story flat roof brick building with a symmetrical three-bay front facade. I'm open to different interpretations of how many bays, absolutely, but I think I decided on three because it feels like there are three distinct bays. Likely constructed circa 1881 to 1882. The building is clad in painted brick, now a deep red tone with areas of exposed red-orange brick showing through, where the paint has deteriorated. The front elevation consists of a restrained Italian influences seen in the use of decorative brickwork, arch window openings, and projecting cornice, supported by uh, paired brackets, and dental molding. The the front facade is organized into three vertical bays, articulated by shallow red brick panels. The central bay contains a large kind of arched window. Um, uh, the window is located within an opening once used as the garage door to reflect the building's former use as a fire hall. This central opening is symmetrically flanked by two tall, narrow, vertically oriented windows that extend nearly to the ground, that are simply framed with segmentally arched heads and off-white painted trim. Um, the second story still has its kind of three-part composition. The center bay includes two paired double hung windows, um, and the narrow double hung windows are flanked on either side. Um, there is a belt course projecting brick that separates the two stories, running the width of facade above the arched ground floor window, in kind of the central medallion here. The east side, which is not visible in my photos here, is visible, is clad in a modern beige horizontal vinyl siding. There is and on the west elevation, which is built close to the adjacent red brick building, there is an entranceway that also cannot be seen. The windows and architectural detailing are consistent with the rest of the building. The building retains many of its original exterior features, including its structural form, decorative brickwork, and Ontario window openings and proportions. Although some modern interventions have been included and altered for the building's current use. Overall, the design reflects a modest Italianate styling, typical of late 19th century vernacular commercial or mixed-use buildings in small-town Ontario, or mid-size town Ontario. I looked at these two properties separately. So we'll look at the kind of center building. This building consists of a two-story flat roofed red orange brick commercial block building, likely constructed circa 1886 to 1887. The architecture also reflects a modest Italianate influence with classical detailing along the upper cornice and arched brickwork above the fenestration. The structure sits flush with the public sidewalk and forms a part of a continuous street wall along the commercial block. The primary facade faces the main street and is defined by a regular rhythm of rectangular window openings at the second story, each set within shallow arched brick recesses with off-white trim and stylized keystones. The windows are double hung sash windows with painted surrounds. A prominent overhanging wood cornice caps this elevation with brackets, dentils, and boxed eaves. The ground story has been significantly altered with the installation of beige horizontal siding and obscuring any original material below the cornice. The storefront windows are large and contemporary in design, and entrances are non-original, include modern hardware and trim. And the rear elevation kind of continues the utilitarian character of the structure, and the roof of the original building is flat and not visible behind the bracketed cornice. Overall, this building also retains a high degree of integrity at the upper story, including original brickwork, window proportions, and Italianate cornice details. And everyone is curious to see what is behind some of this other stuff at the lower street level, where storefront interventions have obscured the original features. Despite these changes, the building continues to convey its late 19th century commercial character and contributes to the historic streetscape in this area. This property here, and again, we'll get proper names for everything and or ways of describing specifically. This building also consists of a two-story commercial red brick commercial block building, but this is with a side gable and a slightly different roof line. The building occupies a prominent corner lot and features a corner facade that transitions between the two street frontages. The architecture reflects the same Italianate influences with classical detailing along the upper cornice and arched brickwork of the fenestration. The structure sits flush with the public sidewalk and forms, again, a part of the continuous street wall along the commercial block. The primary facade faces the main street, which is now St. Paul Crescent, and is set within, is defined by a regular rhythm of rectangular window openings at the second story in the same way as the other part of the building. Each set within shallow arched brick recesses with white trim and stylized keystones. The windows are also double hung with painted surrounds. And this structure also has a prominent overhanging wood cornice, and that has the same kind of bracketed dentils and box eaves as the other part of the building, reflecting that Italianate style. Again, the ground story has been made consistent across both buildings with the same kind of more modern and contemporary materials and design, and then the entrances themselves have been significantly altered. You can see here the side facade here as you go around the corner. There is a large concrete block addition at the rear, which is obviously not original, and some addition here as well. The original roof is clad in asphalt, or the roof of the building is clad in asphalt shingles and slopes gently um, in a side gable. Overall, the building retains a high degree of integrity at the upper story, like the other part of the structure, including that original brickwork, window proportions, and Italianate cornice details. This building also continues to convey its late 19th century commercial character and contributes to the historic streetscape in its massing, material, and form. So I guess I'll stop there and see if anyone has any questions, concerns, feedback, points that they think should be included. I think what I'm going to do with this is eventually this will form part of the designation or the designation report that will go to the Heritage Advisory Committee. And so I feel like it could be circulated maybe following this meeting if we're going to be talking about heritage attributes or whatever. But yeah, any questions, concerns, points, whether we should consider the two buildings as one building and describe it as such. What do you think? Bays, opinions on bays. Andrew?
Well, I have a vested interest in having them described as two buildings for a few reasons, but
Oh, okay.
yeah.
My interpretation of them is as two buildings, and I don't think that is a specialist interpretation. I think anybody would identify them as two separate structures that have a shared history. But if anyone had any strong arguments to consider them or describe them as one building, I just willing to listen and to opinions on that. Yeah.
I wonder if, in order to distinguish them, if you
Mhm.
could if we could maybe call the one building on the right-hand side, maybe call it the McGuire Voisard building,
Mm,
and then the central block, just call that the Voisard block.
okay.
And then because I mean the one was built
So
by the one family, the other one was purchased from McGuire. If we
yeah,
could maybe distinguish them that way, and then say in brackets that the one is 151 to 153 St.
yeah,
Paul Crescent or whatever the address is, and then describe the other as
yeah,
145, 147. I mean,
yeah,
because if you're distinguishing it by name, then that really clearly sets them apart.
yeah. I like that idea, and I think that in similar situations where you have a property with multiple buildings, uh, really when you're looking at like a landscape, that's what you would do is you'd name the structure, you have some significant identifier of the structure that is separate from whatever address may be given to it. Yeah, and I think that will provide the clarity. We can also I can also put together like a diagram like showing which is which, and being very clear as well, if that would be useful. Yeah.
And I think your description, your architectural description of the the attributes is spot on as well.
Okay. Good. 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 You agree with this as being 3 bays or 4 bays? It's so hard. Bays are hard.
Yeah, because I mean, originally when it was just when it had the garage door opening, I mean, the ground floor would have been 3 bays,
Yeah.
and the upper story definitely I would classify that as 4.
Yeah.
So I mean, when we're dealing with a heritage building, uh, the number of bays, do we look primarily at the ground floor as being the
Yeah.
sort of the governing one, or is it the whole of the facade?
Hmm.
Um,
I usually look at the top. I honestly look at this top story more often, and that's why I was like kind of debating because like 1, 2, 3, 4, and like carry it all down. But also this feels like a distinct bay.
I was going
Yeah.
to say
Different.
when you've got that brick banding, that
Yeah.
sort of that would, in my mind, maybe classify it as a 3 bay.
Mhm. Yeah, I agree. Yeah. Okay. I could also remove the discussion of bays entirely from the description, but yeah. Um,
Through the chair, my vote is 3 bays.
3 bays? Perfect.
Yeah,
Thanks.
because I think there's a clear center bay with like 2
Mm,
flanking it, like one
mhm,
on either side. I
mhm.
think that's how I would maybe describe it. But yeah, I also saw Robert's hand up. I don't know if anybody else caught it, but
If I could,
See that?
just on the red brick structure, I've not been inside, so I'm not aware of how it's set up. But the firewall between the two distinct buildings, has that been breached over time, or is that still intact between the two buildings?
It's been breached and was fairly early on the entrance to the 4 upstairs residential units is through the common stairway, which is at 149, which is in sort of the end of the set of the left building there. So you go up and, however, that may not have happened right at the time of building the second building because we've discovered inside the location of an interior staircase. So whether that was opened when the second building was built around 86, 87, or when there was a major renovation around 1920, we're not sure.
Well, thank you. Yeah.
Early either way, though.
Right.
There are no other notes or comments. Again, I'll, following some direction from today's meeting, I'll distribute these descriptions for feedback and also for consideration when putting together the heritage attributes. And we will get to the 906 evaluations, but just a description of the contextual is another thing that I put together for each of these, which is requirement. The surrounding neighborhood is a mix of historic, commercial, residential, and utilitarian architectural styles, reflecting its long-standing development and adaptation over time. The streetscape is defined by this property and is a known cornerstone and landmark in the local community. Adjacent to this, modest residential homes and commercial structures contribute to the neighborhood's character. These buildings vary in style and condition, with 1-story and 2-story structures, featuring a variety of colors, tones, materials, and architectural styles. Some homes have updated siding and other renovations. The area includes many utilitarian buildings with metal or vinyl siding used for small businesses, residences, storage, reflecting its mixed-use environment. Side streets are bordered by lots, by residential and commercial lots with simple fences separating them. The There's a speed limit sign and pedestrian crossings highlights the residential nature of the area, and nearby commercial buildings provide walkable access to the businesses surrounding. The property backs onto the Edith Cavell Public School property, which was built in 1919, and that also defines the Western Hill neighborhood. Overall, the neighborhood is modest in character, blending older heritage architecture with contemporary structures, while some buildings show signs of deterioration. The area maintains a sense of community and history, with many opportunities within. Yeah. Any contextual comments?
I don't know if this is contextual or not, but it dawned on me as you were talking, something that we should mention about the Neptune Fire Hall.
Mm.
As far as I know, it's the only remaining Victorian era fire hall from St. Catharines, which gives it, added significance too.
Yes, that is actually a really good point.
And I don't know, it might even be one of the oldest surviving fire halls in the entire Niagara region, for that matter. I can't think of any others that were built in the 1800s that are still standing.
That's a really good point. And I think that's something that's worth looking into. Just taking a look at, say, I mean, it's hard to determine that there are none, but looking into, other heritage registers in the area, and doing a little bit of research to see if that's the case, because I don't know of any other fire halls, Victorian era fire halls, but
because there was that one on Queen Street in Niagara-on-the-Lake that had the restaurant in the downstairs, and it was from about 1910 or something. And you remember it burnt a few years ago, and they rebuilt it and turned it into a new restaurant, and they replicated it to look like the original fire hall building.
Oh wow.
But any others, I can't think of any.
Yeah.
Oh, there's one in Thorold, I think. Come to think of it, from the 1870s. I think it's an art gallery now. But anyway, so we still have an early representative one.
Yeah, in Thorold, but not in, here Old Fire Hall 1878. Interesting. But definitely in St. Catharines. That's an excellent point in the local context. Yeah.
Through the chair, Lauren, what year was it built in?
I think they think, is it 1883 is closest?
Wasn't it 81, 81,
81,
82?
1881. Yeah, it's 81, 82. Yeah.
So a quick Google search suggests that the oldest fire hall remaining in Ontario is the Yorkville Fire Hall in Toronto, and that was 1877. So this actually is not that much. It's only 4 years off from being the oldest. So pretty impressive.
That's amazing. Yeah, I think emphasizing that is a really good idea when it comes to describing its cultural heritage value.
There's another fire hall on Yonge Street, sort of between Wellesley and Carleton on the west side. And they tore the back end of the fire hall down, but they've left the front
tower
turret.
Yeah.
And they've built a modern commercial condo building all around it. But I mean, and then they took a glass front, and they etched what the rest of the building would have looked like into that glass front. And they've done a really cool job of interpreting, the history of that fire hall, but the turret is still there. So
that's interesting. Yeah, because I think, like, if there are only a couple, like 3 or 4 in the province of this era, I mean, that suggests more of like to a broader significance just beyond the local community. So that might be interesting to look at. Yeah. All right. So going to put together 905 evaluation for these. Looking at the entire property as a whole, which can get a little complicated, but tried to keep it as simple as possible. Is it a rare, unique, representative, or early example of its style, type, or expression? So they are representative examples of 19th century vernacular commercial architecture with Italian influences. While not rare, unique, or unique, they are significant local examples of their type and period and retain a high degree of architectural integrity above grade. Realizing now that I need to include something specific about the fire hall as well, because I feel like that is unique in its type. So I'll add that to that evaluation, especially. So do they have a high degree of craftsmanship or artistic merit? I wouldn't necessarily say that is a yes. They're visually appealing and they have, a nice artistic detailing, but not a particularly high degree of craftsmanship. But that's something to debate and talk about and to consider. Given some of the elements that remain, and not necessary for it to meet 906, but open to discussion and around that. Does it have, in the same way, demonstrate a high degree of technical or scientific achievement? No, I think it has. All the buildings are built using standard masonry techniques and designs, and doesn't have any complexity unusual for its era. So for historical or associative value, the properties are directly associated with several historically significant individuals and institutions. Through its early history, through its connections to the Neptune Hose Company and the Vossard family. These associations together contribute meaningfully to the historical narrative of the community. Does it yield or have potential to yield information that contributes to the understanding of the community or culture? Yes, they provide a valuable insight into the commercial and civic development of the Western Hill area, and has a long-standing connection to the settlement, commerce, and community services in this area. And does it demonstrate or reflect the work of an architect? No, there's no association with a significant architect or builder or designer at this time. And for contextual value, I found that it had significant contextual value, meeting all three criteria. The buildings are prominent visual anchors at that major intersection and form a continuous streetscape that reflects the historic commercial character of this neighborhood. Their scale, form, and materials support the area's character and sense of place. The properties have strong historical and visual links to their surroundings, particularly their corner siding, shared lot lines, and longstanding commercial residential use. And they're physically and historically embedded in the local streetscape and community. And due to their longstanding commercial presence, distinctive architecture, and association with key families and institutions, the buildings are recognizable local landmarks within the Western Hill neighborhood. So, yes, yes, yes. Any opinions, comments, feedback, additions? Definitely need to include a better description up here. And I'm questioning myself on the craftsmanship one, honestly. So, yeah.
I think you're probably right on that one. I mean, the construction is fairly typical. It's
Yeah.
a well-made building, but I think it's more representative than a standout. You know what I mean? And
Yeah, I think definitely. Yeah, and I will include something about the Neptune Fire Hall being unique and special in its type, and as an existing fire hall, Victorian era fire hall too. Okay, before we move on, So as a part of this discussion, I just wanted to get kind of a sense of consensus over whether or not we felt these buildings, did meet 906, and whether I should continue on to put together a statement of cultural heritage value or interest and heritage attributes. Seeing that it meets so many of the 906 criteria, and then kind of taking that from there, having that statement of significance ready for when we move forward with designation of properties, which I think don't necessarily be immediately. We can kind of have a couple ready to go together, but yeah, what do you all think? You think it meets? Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
I would say it definitely does.
Yeah.
I mean, you've got so many yeses in these little criterias that we'd be stupid to say no, they're not important. No, let's forget them.
Yeah. We seem to have lost Holly, but we still have quorum, so I think it's okay. Yeah. Okay.
Well, I certainly agree.
Okay. Well, there you go. So I think given that, I'll go ahead and kind of circulate what I've put together so far, and also put together draft statement of significance based on that, and based on your feedback, and based on the 906 evaluation, and kind of take a go at heritage attributes, and I can distribute them before, at least a week before our next meeting, so we can kind of get some feedback on that, and just kind of see where where we want to go with heritage attributes, and identifying that. Good. Right. Thank you.
I can also share the historical photos with you, Lauren, and if you'd like to share those with the committee, that's fine as well. I think it'll
Perfect.
also help identify where some of the original features are.
Yeah. If there's anything that isn't in especially in the land use history that was submitted, it would be good and even those ones, it'd be good to have like original images for me to save on the server, so we have them, and then I can send all that around. As well.
It's one of them's the same photo, but I was able to get the original and do the high res scan, and
perfect.
it's dramatically better. There's also one I don't think I showed you, which is from the St. Catharines Museum. Now they say it may be this firehouse, but it's an interior shot. They said circa 1900, but if you zoom in, you can see on the wall the calendar is turned to February 1917. So I think that's probably the date of it. But it
Calendar
shows a
from
lot
the
of
future.
interesting detail.
That's
I can't
so
say for sure it is
interesting.
this fire hall, but the dimensions look right.
Yeah.
So
yeah, and it's definitely, it would maybe even just be sometimes like a similar structure can still provide a lot of information, even if it's not the exact structure. But that's very interesting that the calendar is very specific.
Yeah.
If only they have the X's, so you can show the exact day on the calendar.
I wish it did, but no luck.
Yeah. Oh well.
Well, there's also a clock on the wall, so if we had the day, we could get the time as well. So
exact. Oh my gosh, that would be so specific. That'd be great. Yeah. All right. So that's all I have for this property. Thanks, everyone.
Right. So we'll do the motion to receive for each individual one, or do you want to do it collectively at the end?
For the I think we could do the motion to receive for each individual item, because each item is so substantial this time. Yeah.
So would someone like to make a motion to receive the presentation? Robert moves that the discussion regarding the ongoing research regarding the St. Paul Crescent property be received. In favor? Okay, that carries, and we'll move on to 3 Elizabeth Street, and again, turn it over to Lauren.
Thank you. I always forget to say through the chair, but everything I say is through the chair. I promise. All right. So similarly for 3 Elizabeth Street, we've already went through the history at our last meeting. But as far as the architectural, I'm just loading everything up here. as the architectural description goes, so this building itself, or this property itself, contains a 1.5-story front gabled L-plan residential dwelling clad in stucco with decorative trim, likely constructed circa 1880. Although we don't have a specific build date on it. The roof is steeply pitched and clad in red asphalt shingles, with the primary massing oriented towards the street and a cross-gabled side addition extending to the east. The architectural style exhibits elements of the Gothic revival and very Victorian styles, particularly evident in the steep roof lines, the vertical proportions, and the decorative woodwork that you see on the front elevation and on the porch. The front facade features a steeply pitched front gable with decorative barge board painted yellow and blue. This trim includes, scroll cut woodwork and dentils. It terminates at the eaves with paired brackets. I don't know if they're great, but yeah. Projecting 2-story bay window dominates the gable end. It's a little bay. The ground floor bay is polygonal and contains 3 windows with wide painted surrounds. The upper level includes a paired window that's now a casement window set within the gable with plain stucco wall finish, and there is ivy growth that partially obscures this elevation. The windows are painted in a contrasting blue, gray, and yellow color scheme that highlights the architectural detailing. The side facade continues with the stucco finish and includes, this secondary gable that is, where did I lose the spot? That has 2 narrow windows in the gable. The 1-story open porch with low pitched roof projects from the east side. The porch is supported by elaborately turned wooden columns and decorated with applied brackets and ornamental trim in gray and yellow. The entrance is located beneath the side entrance is located within the porch and is accessed by a small set of stairs. The foundation is not visible and due to vegetation in the slope. The rear elevation was not visible from the public right-of-way, but there is, obviously a large addition to the rear that is not is only partially visible from the street. The building retains a high level of architectural integrity, particularly in its decorative trim, massing, and window configuration. The use of this vibrant paint on the detailing emphasizes its Gothic revival and Victorian influences and contributes to the distinctive presence of this property within the streetscape. The local area context. So the property at 3 Elizabeth Street is situated across from the intersection of Elizabeth Street and Napier Street within a low-rise residential neighborhood, which is immediately northwest of the downtown core. The surrounding area is characterized by a compact residential landscape and traditional street grid. The streetscape is composed primarily of 1.5 to 2-story detached dwellings and that are of wood frame or masonry construction that appear to date from the 19th to 20th centuries. The property is located within a mature residential block bounded by York Street to the west, Louisa Street to the north, and is connected to a network of narrow residential streets and sidewalks, including mature trees and a mix of front yard and laneway the front yard and laneway parking arrangements. In the 1913 fire insurance plan, it's indicated that the area was largely developed by the early 20th century, with the majority of the dwellings there today established along Elizabeth and Louisa Streets. In its present day context, 3 Elizabeth Street is part of a residential enclave. The immediate vicinity includes older frame houses, and several homes have been altered with modern siding. Replacement windows are contemporary additions, but the area's built form generally reflects the vernacular working class housing that is typical of early suburban development outside of mid-sized cities like St. Catharines. Yeah, so that's its context. So any questions, comments, additions, things to debate about its architecture and context? Okay. We will move on to an evaluation. So, like the last one. Hi, Mark. How's it going? Yep, I saw that you're here.
Hello.
Hi. Holly was here, but she is stepped out, so the Mark is here. We are just starting the second item on the agenda for that context. So, discussing 3 Elizabeth. Like the other, the previous property, this property also meets a number of the 906 criteria. It is has been found to be a representative example of, late 19th century Gothic revival of vernacular architecture, featuring characteristic elements such as steep roof lines, decorative bargeboard, and a symmetrical gable-fronted form. The painted trim and decorative woodwork highlight its stylistic attributes. I said this one did meet a high degree of craftsmanship, especially because of the porch addition. The applied woodwork, scroll-cut bargeboard brackets and turned porch columns exhibits a high level of craftsmanship. The contrasting paint theme further emphasizes these decorative elements. And, the property doesn't have any sort of high degree of technical or scientific treatment. Everything is very, era appropriate and normal for the era. For historical or associative value, the property is associated with, I forget how we've decided to pronounce this, but Baggy. We decided last month, but particularly Francis Baggy Jr., an early civic leader, tradesman, and fire chief. The family's long-term occupancy contributes to the social and economic development narrative of the city. The property is found to contribute to the understanding of early suburban urban settlements, to be suburbanized definitely, patterns in St. Catharines, and the development of working class neighborhoods during the post-canal era. The detailed land use history absorbs broader insights into inheritance, subdivision, and residential development throughout the city. There's no identified architect or designer, while associated with a local builder. It's not entirely clear, so no. It is found to contribute to the established character of Elizabeth Street and its 19th and 20th century residential character, and also found to be historically and visually linked to its surrounding streetscape, and the plan of subdivision associated with that, and to be reflective of that history and surroundings. And it is not a landmark. Yep. Any questions, comments, concerns, additions? it's interesting that like presenting it, there are things that I would change. So it's already going to make those edits, but yeah.
I think there's a strong case in favor of supporting it,
Yeah.
and I mean, I think you've outlined them all here, so.
Great. Good.
Agreed.
All right. So for this one too, I'll move forward with the heritage attributes and statement of cultural heritage significance, value or interest, and we'll distribute everything and we'll kind of talk about next steps, taking next steps, with the property owner on this property as well. Okay, that's it for me.
So next step is can anyone like to make a motion to receive the presentation? Brian moves that the discussion regarding the ongoing research and upcoming deadlines regarding 3 Elizabeth Street be received, and that staff proceed with preparing a statement of cultural heritage value or interest in heritage attributes for the property. In favor? Okay, the motion carries. And that takes us to item 7.3, which is 15 Welland Avenue updates, and I believe it's Nishida who's going to be walking us through this one.
Hi everyone.
Hello.
Yeah, so I've started working on the history of the property, and who owned it. I found out quite a bit of like the early ownership or the early ownership. It looks like it was owned by Robert Hamlin Jr. at first, and then around 1823, William H. Merritt owned the property. And then after that, it looked like it belonged to like members of the Pierce family. That's all I've been able to piece together so far, just by looking through the old documents and everything. I've also been looking at like the present day ownership. There's been a point where we've been stuck though. It looked like in 1965, the building was owned by the Board of Education for the city of St. Catharines. I actually found this out just a little bit ago, but it looks like the city did own the house, or the education board did own the house. It was used as like an administration building for the school apparently, which was interesting to me. I didn't know they did that.
Yeah,
But
that's so cool.
yeah, I haven't really been able to find the previous owner from the Board of Education, which is what I've been stuck on. So I don't know if anyone has like any ideas on how to help with that.
All you have to do is ask.
Yeah, that's
Maybe,
been it.
yeah.
Yeah.
So you have, so what's the date ranges that you have, and what's your gap that you're looking for?
I currently have like the present day to 1965 and also 1799 to 1884. So whatever's in between 1884 to 1965 is what is missing so far.
Do you want me to look at the abstract indexes and fill you in on that?
Yeah, that would be great.
Okay.
That's great. I know it's not an easy area of St. Catharines to do research on. Oh,
Yeah.
James has sent me a message that he's having some internet issues, so he'll be back. But it's on an easy, and I think like how you've been able to link everything together between these different abstracts so far is great. Yeah. So but appreciate Brian's help, because there are some things that looking at it together we can't even figure it out. But but it is really cool that they used it as an administrative building. I didn't know that. How did you come across that?
I also just like Googled property and there was like a
So, yeah.
Facebook post
Yeah.
where someone is explaining like the history of like the school building beside it.
Yeah.
And also that like the brick house beside was used as an administration building. So
Yeah.
I thought that was interesting.
That's really neat. Yeah. That's great.
Yeah.
That is one great way, to find those kind of little breadcrumbs to follow. Is,
Yeah.
yeah. So, well, thank you.
And the city directories would help as well. If you're following the address through, that's a great way to pick up names, and it'll help you find your chain of title.
Yeah, that's a good
Yeah.
idea. Maybe next week Nishida will show you through the directories as part of it.
That sounds great. Yeah, I think that's about it that I have right now.
Thank you.
Thank you, Nishida. Okay, so my notes. All right, so can we have a motion to receive the update? Mark moves that the discussion regarding the ongoing research and upcoming deadlines regarding 15 Welland Avenue be received. In favor? Okay, that carries. It takes us to item 7.4, and that's regarding 260 Vine Street. Brian's going to update us about his prodigious amount, I understand, of research on this one.
Yeah, this house has a really cool history. Basically, the house itself, it was built sometime between 1856 and 1867. I couldn't drill down on a closer date than that. But the house was built by Dr. Luther Cross, who was one of the early physicians in St. Catharines. He was in St. Catharines by 1832. He took part in the helping to treat the cholera victims in the city at that time. He was involved with the salt works. He opened an early apothecary in the town, and he was quite a character. When you judge, by the provisions of his will, he had an adopted daughter who was seduced by someone, and she had a child out of wedlock. So he left her $10 to buy herself a prayer book and a Bible, so she could read from it to learn how to become a more a repentant sinner, so to speak. It's a really, really cool will that he left. Then the property goes through the hands of a few owners after Dr. Cross died. By the First World War, it belonged to a family named Robinson, or was it Richardson? One or the other. And he was a decorated First World War veteran. He died in Belgium in 1915, and his medals, his war medals, were sent to his widow, care of this house. And we know that the house was called White Lodge at that time because we've got the address label for the medals. And then from there, it was purchased by Abramo Puccini, who was the macaroni king of St. Catharines. He had his macaroni factory in the Stevenson House Hotel. And after the Stevenson House burnt down and his macaroni factory was destroyed, then he lost ownership of this house. He seems to have defaulted on his mortgages. And then by the 1930s, the mid-1930s, the house was subdivided into apartment units. In the 1950s, it was bought by a Finnish family, a somewhat eccentric Finnish family. And the owner of the house was painting in the basement, and he was asphyxiated from the paint fumes. He was painting in a really small enclosed space, and he ended up being asphyxiated. So I mean, it's a really, really cool house. But what's even more interesting for me is the chain of title for this property. It's the only time that I've ever seen a property that has like three conflicting chains of title on it. There's the chain of title that you see in the abstract index, which goes from Andrew Butler to his son Joseph to Matthew Crooks to Charles Donaldson, and then Donaldson sells to Dr. Cross. So, I mean, the title seems to flow. But then you look at the Grantham Township papers and the Upper Canada Sundries and Upper Canada land petitions, and it turns out that Andrew Butler sold to a couple of, like he sold to one owner, it passed down to a fellow named McNeil by 1812, and McNeil became a traitor. He decided he was going to run off and join the American forces in 1812. So his property was confiscated because he was an enemy alien. And because the land register, so you've got that chain of title going down to, the property escheats to the Crown. The Crown didn't know what to do with the land, so they just hung on to it pending an investigation, which wasn't resolved until 1856. Now, the other chain of title, because Joseph Butler realized that the land registry records in Niagara were completely burnt and destroyed, there was no trace of what happened to the property. So he steps forward and he says, well, my father never sold this property, and I'm the heir of Andrew Butler. Therefore, I can sell this property. So he sold it to his brother-in-law, Matthew Crooks, who knew nothing about the government confiscation of this land. And then when he found out about it, he flips the land back to his brother-in-law, who then sells it to a guy named Samuel Cassidy. And Samuel Cassidy, in 1813, 1814, he had applied to Sir Gordon Drummond and said, look, this guy that owned the property was a traitor. I want to have a license of occupation to live on the property. So he gets this license of occupation, but then he can't produce it. Whenever anybody asks him for it, he can't produce it. So there's all these different claims that are sitting on the land, and the government's saying, we don't know who owns it. We have no idea. We can't straighten this out. We have to investigate it. In the meantime, you've got James Sears, who apparently wrote a spelling book in St. Catharines. He claimed the property. The Reverend Clark also put a claim in on the property. And even the town of St. Catharines said, look, we need a second cemetery location besides Victoria Lawn, or a place to put a house of industry. We want this property. So there was just all these conflicting stories. Finally, because Charles Donaldson was the last legitimate deed purchaser in 1853, I think. So the government finally said, okay, Donaldson can have the property, but he has to buy it at 5 shillings per acre, subject to any claims that Matthew Crooks might have on it. So anyway, so it ended up being a 5 3/4 acre parcel of land, and the Gardener's Survey of 1880, where the little yellow arrow is, you can see the footprint of the house underneath the name Luther Cross, and it looks like there's a carriage house up on the north end of the lot. So it's a really storied piece of property. It's a super cool thing. So if anybody wants to read my in-depth research, it's I think a 25-page report I can distribute gladly. It makes great bedtime reading. So that's in a nutshell is the story of White Lodge, aka the Luther Cross House.
Wow, that's fantastic. I would love to read the report, Brian, if you don't mind sharing it.
Me too. I would love that.
I'll send it around with everything else for everyone to read. Yeah.
And I love the Abramo Puccini's family monument over in Toronto with the the weeping figures on top of the tombstone and that. I mean, this property just has so many layers of significance. I mean, not just the fact that it's an old Italianate house and we don't have many of those, but all the different families that were associated with it. I mean, it's one of the richest stories that I've ever researched.
Yeah, there's so much drama and intrigue, and even just that little over. I feel like they could do like a whole like TV show about this place.
Well, especially Samuel Cassidy. I mean, when he's saying like, my son is a drunkard and he's frittered away his patrimony, and if you don't do something, my poor old gray head is going to be in the grave before I know it. I mean, it was so dramatic, so
So
melodramatic.
dramatic. So
Mhm.
dramatic. That's amazing.
So I think it's this one's definitely a keeper,
Hmm.
for designation.
Mhm.
Has anyone ever been in the house since, like recently? Have you known anything about it? Anybody visited?
I knew people who lived in the house in the 1980s, and they just said that it was divided up into apartment units, but
Hmm.
they didn't say anything about whether it had original features inside. I know nothing about that.
Mhm.
Yeah, I mean, at some point, as we proceed through this process, like with 3 Elizabeth, we'll have to reach out to the property owner and see, you know, and if sometimes people let you inside and give you tours of their cool houses. So we'll see.
You never know what's lurking behind drywall and ceilings and other things in those places.
Definitely had style.
Yeah, it could have had some interesting flourishes inside as well, I would think.
Hmm.
Okay,
And
so
it's really neat that we've got even pictures of two of the owners.
mhm.
Oh,
I was at the property yesterday,
yeah.
and there is parking for a number of units. It's tenant parking is the signs, and there's this is probably put into many units, I would think.
Mhm. Yes, and
The directories were suggesting 6.
Well, there's parking for probably 15.
Right. Visitor parking.
Okay.
All right. So would anyone like to, if there's no more questions?
one more
Yeah,
thing. Just
Lauren?
through the chair, Robert also did send some great photos of the property as well. So we have the photos, have the land use history. Going to move forward with the architectural and contextual and the 906 as well, and hopefully have that for you guys for consideration for next month as well.
So if we can have a motion to receive from someone, anyone?
I'd be happy.
Robert moves that
Sure.
the discussion regarding the ongoing research and upcoming deadlines regarding 260 Vine Street be received. In favor? That carries. Moves us to item 7.5. Lauren's going to walk us through next steps.
Kind of as we've been talking throughout this, next steps for next month would be moving ahead with those statements of cultural heritage value or interest in our heritage attributes, circulating everything to people so that you guys can provide feedback and kind of have an idea around making some decisions around these properties for next month. Reaching out to the property owner of 3 Elizabeth to kind of start that conversation with them. And as I just mentioned, for 260 Vine, putting together some more of that background information so we can have a draft 906 for consideration for next month as well. Yep. And then I think Andrew, we were talking. You have some research items that are also almost ready to come as well.
Yeah, I have. I'm almost finished the research on One Welland Avenue, And there was another rural property that I had most of the info on, so I put that together as well. It's on the registry, but not on our priority list. But I figured I'd send it along anyway. And I've also started the research on the Embassy Avenue properties, which seem to have a pretty interesting history there. So look forward to digging into that more. So that's what I'm working on. Is there anyone else working on something they want to mention? Mark?
Here we go. Yeah, 219. I don't know if you guys touched on this earlier. 219 Merit. Yeah, that one. Did you guys touch on this earlier?
We did not know.
Okay. I just yet to do a title search on this one. I have been at the special collections, but I haven't yet dug into title. I'm not when I look at who had the land, everything points to like Lock 6 right now with Merritt. But that's about it. So I would think that he had it, but I'm not going to just guess.
Did you get the abstract index pages I sent?
Yes, I did.
Okay.
Yeah. But those go just back to Merritt, as unless I missed something.
Well, yeah.
Sorry, no, Riordan.
Yeah, because there would be like the Grantham Memorial pages, the expropriation of the land by the Welland Canal Company, and then from the Canal Company to, I guess, Riordan's.
Maybe I must have missed that page. You sent a few, right?
Yeah, and the ones that I sent, I think they started out with a deed in 1845 that wasn't registered till 1900 or something like that.
Okay.
I'd have to look at them again.
Well, the one thing I don't know is the condition of it right now either. But I do have if you don't mind me just reading a few things that I have from research I've done, just from a multiple different sources. One second, I just have to plug my computer in before that. I'm not sure how much of it is going to be redundant, stuff that we already know, the multiple resources that are available. But I put together things of interest, my interest anyway. But I'll start with the building and what I've compiled here. The building, this 3-story cut stone mill, is distinguished by contrasting stone radiating arch voussoirs with keystones over the multiple windows and contrasting stone coining. Recessed panels and stringer course across the front also add character to this old building. The back or canal side is much plainer with flat windows with no contrasting voussoirs and less decorative stonework. The front windows are segmental and semicircular. The segmental ones are arranged in pairs on the projecting pieces located on either end of the building. The semicircular ones are in the middle recess section. This building is supported by large concrete columns in the basement and heavy tie rods, not to mention the structural support provided by the 2-foot thick solid stone walls. Parts of the building are collapsing at the rear and much of the building is not in use. But right now, it has an addition on the front that's used as an auto parts store, and one of the bays on the main floor is being used as a tinting shop, window tinting shop. I know that. So we know about Lock 6, the first mill. A few years later, Like he had leased it from Thomas R. Merritt, son of William Merritt, one of the founders of Welland Canal, and just a you know prominent business figure in St. Catharines. But 4 years after that, the Roy Orden paper mill built in Meryton, and that was considered the finest and best equipped mill in North America, with a daily capacity of 10 tons of news and wrapping paper. The Riordans were among the first on this continent to undertake the manufacture of ground wood pulp using sulfite or sulfur. Prior to this, newspaper had only been made from straw, felt, and rags. As pioneers in the manufacture of sulfite fiber, the Riordan Company are recognized as the leading pulp experts of the North American paper trade, and their sulfite has become the standard. John Riordan of Riordan Paper Mills. I should have prefaced this. I'm talking as if you guys already know this history, but I should know to make it into a nice story. That's what I'm learning from this right now. John Riordan sent his younger brother to England to purchase like the latest type of equipment, like the state of the art, the newest that was available, the best that was available. Charles was his name. This machine was equipped with 9 dryers for fast performance and calendar rolls for polishing the surface of the paper. Around this time, up until then, most paper was imported from America. The spread of literacy in Canada expanded newspaper circulation and increased demand for newsprint. The most significant single factor in helping the paper industry in Canada to meet the challenge of this demand and grow into a major industry was the temporary stall of imports or exports from America because of the Civil War that broke out in 1861. From already established power and relationships, Riordan calmly assessed the business prospects generated by the war and accurately foresaw that the intensity of the Civil War would virtually paralyze production in the United States. There's no doubt that Riordan possessed considerable initiative and that he had, quote, a most persuasive personality backed by unlimited nerve and could not only make people do what he wanted, but make them like it into the bargain. It was only when John Riordan decided to give his full attention to the paper industry in Canada that it began to realize its full potential. The market for paper in Canada had grown tremendously, principally due to the mechanization of newspaper production. The development of the paper industry is basically a facet of the story of the dogged determination of Upper Canadians to produce a nation free of American control. So this particular property was much bigger at the time. Most of the buildings, I believe, to the west are gone now. There's just a big lot there. I'd seen that it was the first sulfite mill ever in North America that helped, launch literacy really in Canada. I think is a very popular, or not popular, but very important piece of land and history in St. Catharines, although in North America. I just by looking at the building at the beginning without knowing the history, I thought it was worthy in now. Yeah. So important piece of history. I don't think we should forget about this one.
It's definitely distinctive. You mentioned problems at the back of the building with it. How severe are they?
This was from an article from the 1970s. So I doubt it has gone in under major repair. Anything falling down probably would have just let to fall down.
Mhm. So it's probably addressed one way or the other, probably removed or fixed since
Yeah.
then.
Yeah. We'd have to do some physical research on that.
Robert, you had a question?
Yes, through the chair, thank you. Was this building actually part of the Riordan Mills? I remember a very large, imposing building there when I was young, at the head of Merritt Street as you came up from Hartsel Road. It was a massive building, and I don't know whether this is part of the Riordan complex or not. So, excuse my ignorance, but maybe you can enlighten me. Is it part of that?
Yeah, it is. Yeah, that was their second mill. That was the new
Okay,
mill. The one
because
on
this
lot
one's,
6. The
yeah, this one sort of backs onto the canal itself. So
Yeah,
it would have used the canal for part of, but I didn't realize that it was part of the mill. No, that's great.
yeah.
Too
The
bad, too bad we lost the big portion. That was amazing. It's an amazing property. That's the one that was torn down, probably in the 60s, I'm guessing.
yeah. Do you remember any other buildings on that lot?
This was, as I remember coming up Hartsel Road and then onto Merritt Street, as you come over the tracks, and it was, you could see it in front of you. It was a massive building with a large cupola on top, and a dark building, dark imposing building.
Yeah, that one's not there anymore. I know that.
No, no,
Yeah.
it was taken down. I'm assuming probably in the 60s. I was very young. I remember seeing it.
But I have seen some beautiful photos of that building.
Yeah. Yeah, but as I say, I just wasn't sure whether this was part of the complex, and if it was, then it's all that's remaining. So you certainly don't want to lose what we've got.
What I've said is probably about up until the late 20s. And they're like they're only focusing mainly on Riordan, on the
Right.
Riordans.
Wonderful.
'Cause I just felt that was like the more important part of like the creation of it and them holding on to it for decades
Mhm.
from the
Thank
60s
you.
into like what 70 years approximately there.
Thank you for that.
And just to sort of put the building into a little more context too, um, the first commercial paper that was manufactured in Upper Canada was the Crooks family in, I think it was 1826. The government sponsored a contest to get paper mills running, and the Crooks family had a little paper mill that they started up in Dundas, I believe. It didn't last too long, and then they started making paper at the Todmorden Mills in Toronto in the 1830s and onwards. But their production, as well was limited. And then, of course, the Riordan paper mill started up. So it was like the third major paper manufacturing plant in Canada West. And it certainly eclipsed the others in terms of size and volume of output. So it does have significance in that respect as well. When you look at like I say, the overall development of paper manufacturing in Ontario.
A huge supplier to George Brown of the Globe as well.
Lauren?
Yeah. Through the chair. That was all very fascinating, and like you, I saw this building and I knew it had a history, and I thought it was as interesting. But there is seems to be a lot of significance there, kind of in the broader context, like beyond St. Catharines for sure. Brian, do you know if there's anything remaining of those other mills too? Like,
The I think the Crooks Mill is still there, but it's in a really ruinous state. There's only like
mm,
the foundations left of it.
mm,
And the mill at Todmorden is still I think it's still there. It's part of that Brickworks development down in the valley, the Don Valley.
Interesting.
So there's traces of these other buildings around. But this one is like,
This isn't
again,
great.
it's it's there. It's complete.
I have this. Like, I don't know if you could see it. Maybe no, you can't. Never mind. But it's you could see the whole property. You can't right now, but of everything, even in this is 1912, including the sulfite storage over here. It's the fire insurance map, I think. 1912, I believe. When it's the building, the original building before any additions of bleachers and other storage buildings. It's on the map of 1867 in the Meriton map of 1867.
I'd like to see that map.
I just have a question too. Is that why like Riordan Street uptown, like they use the Riordan name for that? Is that any significance to Riordan Street?
I don't know. I would imagine that requires some research.
It's all part of the same family.
I would think so, yeah.
If you want to see that 1867 map, it's in the map drawers outside the special collections room at the downtown library.
Yeah, thanks for that tip. I that's where I found it exactly.
Yeah, it's a really cool map. It's got a lot of detail on it.
Top left drawer, if anybody is wondering.
All right. So anything else under next steps, Warren? Okay.
I'll probably for next meeting, I'll have the research for 2 Queenston and 38 Geneva. I've just started on that.
Fantastic. Good. It moves on to business arising from the minutes. Is there any? None? No. Items of correspondence? Any? None? No. So the date of our next meeting is May 16th, 2025. And would anyone like to move to adjourn? Robert moves that the St. Catharines Heritage Advisory Committee Designation Subcommittee meeting be adjourned at 4:09 p.m. In favor? Okay, we are free.
Thank you all.
Have a good weekend.
Thanks. Everyone have a great weekend. Yeah.
Everybody.
Yeah, we have
Thanks,
a great
everyone.
weekend. Yeah.
Bye-bye.
Happy Easter next week. Okay,
Oh,
bye.
yeah.